Radio frequency radiation helps us to predict the weather, to talk, to hear, to see. But what is it? What is the hazard? Because high-power RF is a hazard, the Air Force follows the same national safety standards used by the civilian industry. Air Force policy is to develop and operate equipment that minimizes unnecessary RF and to develop and implement procedures to maximize personal safety by restricting access to any areas that might exceed the Air Force standards. However, people still have concerns.
What is RF radiation?
This diagram divides the electromagnetic spectrum into three major regions: radio frequency, light, and X-ray. All elements of the spectrum are identifiable by the amount of energy and its corresponding frequency. X-rays are in the ionizing portion of the spectrum. Here, the energies are so great that they cause the biological harm we most often think about with the word radiation. As we move down the spectrum, energy levels decrease and we enter the comfortable and familiar light region. Farther down is the radio frequency region, where the energy levels and frequencies are even lower. Energy has now dropped to the point where microwaves are over 100,000 times weaker than any of the X-rays. Consequently, radio frequency radiation cannot cause the type of biological harm associated with the high-energy X-rays. Many of these RF frequency bands are familiar to us, such as the AM and FM on our car radios, and the HF, VHF, and UHF frequencies used by military radios. Other uses include microwaves, radar, satellite communications, and a variety of navigational systems. So, radio frequency radiation is non-ionizing energy being transmitted between the frequencies of 3 kilohertz and 300 gigahertz.
But how does RF affect me?
There are two well-understood effects to personnel. RF heating is a known process which we use every time we turn on a microwave oven. The power and time set on the microwave oven determines the temperature of the water. When the microwave process is complete, the water is the same, only the temperature has changed. But our bodies are not simple glasses of water that just accept the additional heat. Our bodies react to any extra heat by turning on a very efficient cooling system. Blood circulation, perspiration, and breathing all work together to get rid of this excess heat.
Well, the eyes and testes are more susceptible to heat because they can't dissipate heat as well as the rest of the body. Cataracts are possible, but by the time cataracts form, there has to be enough energy to cause the skin tissue around the eye to burn. Temporary sterility is possible in males, but it's like overexposure to a hot tub. It's reversible.
Are there hazards to a pregnancy?
When the standards and tech data are followed, everybody, including pregnant women and their developing fetus, are safe. Remember, RF overheating can only occur when personnel are inside the hazard area. The other RF hazard to personnel is electrical shock. While usually limited to just the antenna during transmission, radios and other systems can induce a current into the metal skin of the aircraft or other nearby metal surfaces. When you touch the metal surface or the antenna, your body becomes a path for the current to flow. During a transmission, you can receive anything from a tingling sensation to a severe shock. For some aircraft, such as the B-1, the entire skin becomes a shock hazard while the HF radio is transmitting. For others, like the C-5, it is only the tail area near the HF antenna or just a couple of feet from the wire antenna on the C-130 that becomes a hazard.
What are the hazards to fuel?
An induced RF current could cause an arc as the nozzle is hooked up, igniting any fuel vapors. Installing the fuel truck to aircraft bond first will prevent this arc from happening. For power on fuel servicing, first ensure that the aircraft radios, radar, and other transmitting systems are turned off. When the aircraft you are working on intrudes the 50-foot fuel servicing safety zone, do not transmit with any RF source until fueling is complete. Also, the radar hazard area and the fuel servicing safety zones cannot overlap. Again, wait until servicing is complete. Finally, HF radio transmissions have a default hazard distance of 300 feet for fuel servicing unless the aircraft tech data or your operating instructions say otherwise.
How does RF affect munitions?
Electroexplosive devices such as flares are expended by an electrical current. An induced RF current could expend a flare at the wrong time.
Is there a safety program?
Your Unit Radiation Safety Officer, or RSO, works with the bioenvironmental engineer and safety personnel to ensure tech data and your unit OI identifies safe operating procedures. The unit RSO is your point of contact for any RF safety matters and oversees all unit actions to eliminate RF hazards, such as updating the unit OI for new transmitters and keeping overexposure reporting procedures current. Meanwhile, the bioenvironmental engineer at the hospital runs the base RF radiation safety program. This job includes assessing the personnel hazard area of RF transmitters and advising units about RF issues, such as posting requirements. The safety office works on those issues related to electroexplosive devices and fuel servicing. However, your safety still depends on you and your coworkers being aware of the hazard areas, the sources, and following the proper procedures. For example, when operating the aircraft radar or other high-powered systems, the hazard area will be clearly marked and a safety person watching the hazard area. Or, when in a shop, install the dummy load or hat before transmitting. Skipping a step has caused several incidents, such as removing a waveguide with the power still on.
So what are the symptoms of an overexposure?
Most incidents have been without any symptoms. However, if there are any complaints of feeling ill, use sulfate buddy care procedures to treat the symptoms. In some cases, a trip to the hospital may be required.
What do I do if I'm overexposed?
If you suspect that you or a coworker have been overexposed, stop the work, treat any symptoms, and promptly notify your shift supervisor or flight chief. They will contact the unit radiation safety officer and the bioenvironmental engineer. The bioenvironmental engineer will investigate and determine the amount of RF exposure. A medical checkup will usually be done within 72 hours with a copy of the final report going into the medical records for future reference. Remember, the Air Force follows the national safety standards that are used by the civilian industry. Air Force policy is to develop and operate equipment that minimizes unnecessary RF and to develop and implement procedures to maximize personal safety by restricting access to any areas that might exceed the Air Force standards. For any further questions or concerns, see your Unit Radiation Safety Officer or these references for more information.